Hey Internet, my name's Jasmine and I am the person behind the Between Two Worlds YouTube channel, website and Facebook group, and I kind of need your help. So why do I need your help? Well, you may notice that a couple of years ago I was doing a really big push with everything, and then all of a sudden I had a drop off, like a sheer drop off in doing stuff. Well, I was using all of this stuff to recover and rehabilitate myself from a head injury, and I'd gotten to the point where I was actually quite able to do a lot of stuff, and that's why I was doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then all of a sudden I've had my third head injury during my life, and that put me back quite a lot. I wasn't able to really talk or speak, and I've kind of gained that back over the years of trying to just recover from that. And so in my recovery, I feel that I've gotten to the point where I can actually be productive again. And so I'm really doing a hard push on doing a whole bunch of things. And some of those things are including some scripts, digitizing of old films and photos, transcribing, doing some archiving, just a whole bunch of stuff. And for some of those scripts that I'm writing, I kind of need people's opinions so I can compare and contrast, because that's the way that I am as a person, is I like to compare perspectives and to contrast them and play with them and look at them and then find my own opinion after I've looked at those other points of view. So I've been able to write the script so far about how I am reacting to the picture and my things, but I kind of need access to other people's opinions. So what am I talking about? What's the particular thing that I need help with? Well, the picture that I am focusing on is called Ameslan Prohibited. And this picture I came across while going through my grandparents' estate and digitizing, just photocopying their documents. And I had a pretty visceral reaction to it when I first saw it. And it took me a while to kind of process it. And when I went, I was ready, I felt I was ready to kind of start doing all this stuff again. I really wanted to start with this one. I thought I'd just do a quick example of how I processed this picture so that it could help people to kind of figure out what they want to do in their own comments and their own perspectives, and so you guys have something to follow. To begin with, when I first saw this picture, again, I said I had a very visceral reaction. Positive, negative? Well, it was quite negative. I was very angry by this picture. And that's mainly because of my family history, my work history, just a whole bunch of stuff that I've experienced in my life. And I have stories from my family and from my work. And that is of the push to control sign language and control deaf people in the access of their language. I am a coder, which means I have deaf parents. I have a family that's generationally deaf, so that means so far we've got 3 generations of deaf people in my family. And before on my head injury, I was a teacher of the deaf, so my entire life was basically surrounded by deaf people. And so I have a whole bunch of history and baggage to do with sign language, all up in my head, and that is why it was quite negative. For example, I've got stories from my grandparents that their teachers would force them to sit on their hands. They were forced to sign signed English, which is not the natural language of deaf people. It is a transposed English sign language. It's a constructed language. So all of those stories, all of that negativity that was flowing through, I was like, well, yeah, of course. These hands being chopped up and these hands being handcuffed demonstrates the kind of control that deaf people have had over the last 300 years forced upon them. Like, they're either forced to speak or forced to kind of minoritize themselves, like stay in the minority, stay in a group where they're kind of only access to a small group of people, where they're seen as other and different. That's not positive. That's not healthy for people to do that. It's a deaf person's right to be able to access their language. It's actually a human right. The UN human right is for a deaf person to have access to sign language as much as they need. Like, obviously there are people out there that don't need it or don't want it, and that's fine, but there are people out there that do need it and have no access to it, and they're just forced to communicate with no language. So yes, this is a historical thing. Yes, this is historical control. So when I was processing this, I was like, yeah, in the past we've had a lot of control and a lot of like ripping apart of the language and controlling and forcing the language to be a certain way and making sure it's not a natural language, one that's been built by the community that speaks it. And so I thought, while I was processing it, the words were saying in the past and even today, sign language has been banned in the classroom and oppressed by society. And this picture says it all. I thought to myself, well, actually, no, Jasmine. You have taught in classrooms where sign language has not been banned. You have worked in schools that embrace sign language. In where I live, Australia, it's called Ameslan. I have taught in classrooms where it doesn't matter who they were, the mainstream hearing teacher, myself, the deaf children, or the hearing children, everyone was able to access sign language. I have encouraged a culture within my own classrooms to basically celebrate, not force it upon people, but like in people in their own times to take it on and engage with it as much as or as little as they wanted to. And many times by the end of the year, I would have kids that were very standoffish at the start of the year who embraced it and really took it on as something that they enjoyed engaging in. So in modern Australia and modern, like the world today, should this picture still be such a negative thing? Yes, today, modern Australia, modern America, modern England, modern Western countries, this sort of control isn't entirely there. It's there. There are barriers, and yes, there are people in politics that are kind of pushing an agenda with sign language, but it is definitely not as bad as it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago. But there are places in the world today where, not necessarily in third world countries, yes, third world countries do have these sorts of like no access to or prevention of, that those situations are on a level where it's similar to where it was 100 years ago. But there is also people today that don't want their deaf people, their deaf children, their deaf family to engage with sign language. Politicians have their own little bits of control that they have done recently. But there's also such a push, certainly in my country of Australia, a push, embracement, and engagement with sign language, where there are people out there who have seen it on television because of things that are happening in our world, much more than it has been in the past, and are like, I want to do that. So in processing this picture, I went from quite negative, and then I have kind of ended up quite positive that sign language, American Sign Language, Ameslan or Auslan, sign languages today aren't in such an oppressed, sort of controlled and banned place that they were only a few decades, 1972. And because of that, I think we've come a long way. Yeah, of course, we could always be improving, and we can be doing better, and yeah. But do I think this is a relic of the past? No, I think it's going to be something that's always going to be striking. It's going to always have a strong. It's going to force a strong reaction because of people's histories. But I think we should celebrate and see how far we've come. Look, you see Auslan interpreters on the TV, you see interpreters on the TV all across the world. There are kids that are learning it in school. And yes, there's difficulties, but we are greatly improved. And that's what I'm thinking about it now. Like, yeah, at first, negative. Now I'm like, I've turned around and I'm like, I actually like it. It reminds me of how far we've come. And now when I look at it, I go, well, yeah, we're not there. It's not my grandparents' time. It's not my parents' time. It's mainstream society is embracing it, and embracing the deaf experience, and embracing the experiences of other people and other perspectives and other cultures. So isn't this great? So to end this video, I'm going to ask for you to go on your own little journey with looking at this picture here, this Ameslan Prohibited, and hopefully you'll find time to answer me back and give me some comments so that I can compare and contrast in a future video about how different people of different ages, different cultures, different places around the world react in their own little way based on their own histories and their own experiences to something as provocative as Ameslan Prohibited. And if you could answer me in some ways, like there's the YouTube channel, the Facebook group, I'd be really appreciative, because then I can actually have something to sink my teeth into. It'd be really helpful. All right, Internet, I will see you later, Internet, and hopefully it won't be too long before I'll be finishing off those scripts and making more videos. Thanks. Bye.